Welcome to Thriver's Ed, the podcast that's all about giving you the practical, no-nonsense advice you need to level up your life and business. I'm your host, Marcy Rossi, success coach, business strategist, and alcohol-free enthusiast. If you're ready to crush your goals, optimize your productivity, and live your best, most authentic life, then you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into topics like the psychology of success, practical strategies to boost your performance, and the unexpected ways living alcohol-free can elevate your life. Whether you're looking to boost your business, improve your health, or simply become a better version of yourself, Thriver's Ed is here to help you do just that. So grab your iced coffee, buckle up, and let's get thriving. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Thriver's Ed. Today, I want to talk about really the how and why we can build our own platform. And with this, I'm talking really about publishing and podcasting. And so I have brought on a true expert in both of these fields today. I am so excited to sit down with her. I have with me today Dr. Christiana Schroeter. Dr. Christiana is a business and wellness coach, an award-winning professor, and a best-selling author. She created Petite Practice to help professionals achieve success through small, intentional actions. As the host of a globally ranked top 1% podcast, Happy Healthy Hustle, she empowers entrepreneurs to build thriving businesses without stress or burnout. Her latest book, because yes, she has more than one, Discover Your Superpower, includes exclusive podcast episodes packed with expert insights, helping readers apply what they learn in real time. Dr. Christiana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to share some of my secrets. So audience is going to be a good one.
Absolutely. You are so well-rounded. I think these are two fantastic different things we can walk onto. And the fact that you're an expert in both is going to make this a really great episode. But I want to kind of pull back the curtain a bit and figure out how it is that we got here, because you're originally from Germany. You came to the US on a Fulbright scholarship and you pursued a PhD in health economics. So at what point or how did you realize that you could transfer this academic journey into a thriving coaching business?
Oh, this is a brilliant question. So when you listen to my title, the health economics part, you're probably already wondering, hold on, I've heard of economics. What is health economics? Now, think about that. We are all like business owners, or many of us are. And that health piece, most of the time, is actually what's missing. So I connected economics with health. So my dissertation focused on obesity and how we can change consumers to maybe make better decisions at the grocery store in terms of putting something in their cart that actually adds to a thriving health. I do the same thing in my business. I basically have business owners that reach out to me and they say, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. I have like a million different things I need to get done. And they put the health on the back burner. So my life was always focused on that Venn diagram intersection, the thriving business. I see things like in terms of productivity, scale, numbers. I want to grow your revenue. But at the same time, I know a lot about health. And I know that health is sometimes the one thing that we put on the back burner. But then once we put it on the back burner for too long, it tends to actually cost us a lot of money. So I have that understanding too. And that's really how it got started. That when I wrote my dissertation, I thought I need to change my little corner of the world with my dissertation. And then when I came into coaching, I realized that that dissertation now needs to be translated into a practical application with business owners.
Okay, so it was always kind of intentional. Like for my own journey, I did
Mhm.
like a bit of health in that I was helping women change their relationship with alcohol, and I had so much fun with the business building piece that it was a very intentional transition into talking about really what it was that I was obsessing over. But it sounds like for you, both of these were true passions, and you saw that they can't really be separated. There's not like a health piece and a business piece that they're intertwined. Is that kind of correct?
Correct. And I used to work as a dietitian as well. And the reason why I did not enjoy this job, even though I always thought I wanted to be a dietitian, was because I was missing that element of the how do we do this at home? Which is what most solopreneurs that work from home are really missing. They know that they need to take care of their health, but they don't know how to do it at home. Or they know that they need to add wellness into their day, but they don't know how to do it while they build their business. And that's really where my cutting edge knowledge comes in, that I kind of help them understand you can do both. It's always both, right? And I call it a harmony. I don't like the word balance. I call it a harmony. Can we harmonize our business growth together with staying healthy and active? Because the healthier you are, the more your business is actually going to thrive.
I love that. And I can see now where the podcast title is coming from. If you're talking about happy, healthy hustle, right? You're like, I want it to be healthy, but I also want to be thriving in this. I can't really thrive if I don't have that health piece really intertwined. And so I'd love to talk about your podcast, which is uber successful. A lot of the times when podcasts are in that top percent, 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever rank, it's really just a matter of longevity. Like the fact that they have hundreds and thousands of episodes, they've been on the airwaves for 10 years or so, they're just naturally going to kind of move up the ranks over time simply from having more content. But that's not really your story, if I understand correctly. It's a couple years old, this podcast. So can you tell me
Mhm.
what was the launch plan? Like, how did we end up here?
Yeah, actually, the podcast was launched on March 23rd, 2023. And between March and June, it already reached the top 2.5%, I think, in June. Now, I have to be honest with you, Marcy, I did not know that there was even such a thing like a ranking. A friend reached out to me in June and she said, "Oh, I've been looking at rankings of podcasts. I noticed your podcast." And it's like, yeah, right. Because there's actually a few podcasts that have a variation on that title. But then I noticed, oh my gosh, that's me. That's my picture right there. So I was actually already ranked so quickly. And then within, I would say June, July, August, within another 3 months or so. So within 6 months, it already reached the top 1%. And so by now, I just published episode 66. I haven't even broken 100 yet. So you're exactly right. It is not quantity. It's more really that I figured out what makes my podcast different. So it's maybe more the quality and the differentiation piece that led me to this particular ranking.
So it wasn't necessarily like a big promotion push or paid ads or like a full-on launch. I know of another podcaster, her podcast did really well quickly launching because she already had this massive audience of like, 50,000 people on Instagram. So when they tell her she's got another resource for them, they fled over there. So it was really about, if I'm understanding you correctly, dialing into what it is that makes your message and your podcast unique. That was really people were diving in because they weren't finding it somewhere else. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it for me, it's really focusing more on how do we grow. It's more the how piece. So a lot of my episodes start with how to do this, how to do that. And it's very hands-on. And I also believe that we all have different learning styles. So while somebody might listen to the podcast, you can also view it on YouTube. You can also read it on my blog. I spent a ton of time putting my podcast episodes into a written format, not just the listen notes, so to speak, not just the transcript, but I actually analyze what I talk about and I put it in a digestible format into a written content. Because there could be this mom that doesn't have time to pop in their earbuds or doesn't have time to pull out her phone and read it and watch it, but she has maybe time to read it. So I want to make sure that my audience feels I'm tapping into their different learning styles and I'm making it accessible for them. So speaking about like tips and my secrets, I think that's definitely one of my biggest tips is don't just think of the podcast as the one vehicle is the audio content, but rather really figure out, is it something that people always listen to, or maybe there's another way that I can reach them? Because while I didn't pay for ads, while I didn't have 50,000 people on my email list, I knew that my people were active professionals. And I knew that I can't just get them on the airwaves. I knew that I needed to also maybe write out that blog post. And I think that was really what helped me succeed so quickly, that I was very deliberate in making the content available to them in various different ways.
I think that's really key. I know in my earlier blog posts, I was just initially just to have content there. I was not blog post, but blog post related to my podcast. I was just copying in the transcript. And so it's like messy and doesn't evenly flow. And I've seen other people that will take their podcast and put it on their blog and they'll have the player. And then the blog is really just like, I talk about A, B, and C, but they don't tell you what A, B, and C are. They're trying to push you off to yet another platform. And you're
Mhm.
taking something and you're repurposing in ways that they can stand alone. They don't have to listen to your podcast. They're still getting that content from the blog. Or if they want to listen to it, or if they want to watch you on YouTube, you're really repurposing it in a way that's not just pulling pieces. You're just providing value based on, how it is that they like to learn. I think that's great. How do you how do you decide what to talk about for your podcast? Like, how do you know what it is that's really going to resonate with people so that they'll shoot you up to the top 1%?
That's actually the fourth dimension, so to speak, right? So I have the audio, I have the video, I have the website with my blog. Now the fourth element is that I actually talk to my audience in person, right? It could be via Zoom, they were clients. It could be in person that I see them when I coach my classes and they just tell me. Like I was actually just at a store last weekend, right? I bought some hand cream, and the lady at the checkout said, "Oh, and I listened to your podcast, and I really liked this particular episode that is called The Top Five in May." And it took me a while to figure out, oh, she's talking about me. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, the top five in May. And I was like, I need to create a follow-up on that, don't I? Because now it's been June and July. And she said, I would love that. So people tell you what they want. And I think the more you make them aware that they can, the more you can do episodes that actually answer questions. And quite honestly, sometimes it's also things that people want to know. They know that I have a PhD, and then they email me or text me and ask me something. And instead of just writing them back, I think they are just the ones that step forward and ask the question, but it's probably not like a unique situation. It might be a question that some other people have as well. And then I create a whole podcast episode about it because I'm an educator and I'm a firm believer that if I explain something to one person, it probably could reach a wider audience. And if I already spent the time researching it, why not just use it and make something really snappy about it, like a podcast episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really, I want to underscore that kind of conversations with your audience. I think that's really important. But I also recognize that, especially in my audience where people are just now starting out, they don't really have an audience yet. And so I'm really curious your thoughts on kind of using podcast to grow an audience versus nurture an existing audience. Where do you
Mm.
kind of land on that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's the old strategy of like you send out an email letting people know, oh, I just dropped a podcast episode. I actually many times don't even do that. In my mind, my emails are nearly like a little bit of a different animal than just talking about I dropped a podcast episode. Because while I know that people see value in announcing that, I sometimes reserve the email for a little bit more of a storytelling that's going beyond even what the podcast episode is. So for me, the podcast really came more from, just talking to people in person. And when I was teaching workshops, etc., that I was looking at as an extension of what I was teaching. Maybe a little more specific, like let me tell you three tips how to create an elevator pitch. So it's very niched. And I think if you don't have an audience yet, an easy way to do that is whenever you meet somebody, have your business card. And on the back of my business card, I actually have one QR code for my podcast and one QR code for my books, where people can just scan with their phone and immediately leads them there. Because 8 out of 10 times people say, oh, I didn't even know you have a podcast. So wherever you are, my email signature, for instance, I don't just list my name and my title, my socials. I also list my podcast or my business card. I talk about it. And you always want to make sure that it comes across as a way I'm serving my clients. I don't want to just go to my podcast to increase my listen volume, but it's like something. Oh, I talked about this recently on my podcast. If you have the chance, you could check it out. More like that, to where when somebody asks you something, instead of answering the question again, you could just say, well, why don't you go to the podcast or to the YouTube? And that's where it's at. And same with my books. I don't just like, have like, a sales pitch for my books, but I'm more if somebody asks me something specific. For instance, one of my books is called How to Master Your Goals. If they ask me about goal setting and habits, I say, well, I wrote a whole book about this. And then, that's how it works out.
So it's really about promoting it. It's not just this one-time launch of I had this big podcast, everybody's going to flood in. You are finding all kinds of opportunities to promote it, whether that's through different channels like your blog, your YouTube, your email signature, your business cards. When people are asking questions, instead of, just creating a new answer from scratch every time, pushing them to the episodes that are going to solve these problems. It's not just this one time I told my audience about this one time and hope that they're going to find me. It is reminding them over and over again that you have a key resource for them that can solve their problems. Dr. Christiana, I'm curious, is it, in your opinion, ever too soon in starting your business to start a podcast?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I totally think so.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I kind of like started on a whim. Like I mentioned earlier, the date, the March 23rd, 2023. I'm a firm believer in numbers and dates. And because I'm a very structured person, those dates create deadlines for me. So all my books are launched on like these fun days, like 9/9/2019 or something like that. It's just like that's just how I function in my life because it helps me create fun deadlines. I think that if you're starting out a business and let's say you're creating a lead magnet that leads to a program or course that you're selling, or maybe you're writing a book, so you're already busy with this thing, and then you're like, well, maybe I should also launch a podcast. I can tell you, it's a little bit like rubbing your stomach and rubbing your head in the opposite directions. Your mind is just like, oh, yeah. So you want to feel when you launch your podcast, you're at a spot to where you can actually create episodes and keep it up. Because so many podcasts, I don't know, the stats are like really high, 85, 90%, stop after not even 10 episodes because it's not just the recording piece, it's the editing, it's, creating something of value overall that you asked me earlier how I come up with the episode. So it's the research, the recording, the editing, the publishing. So it's a little bit like, let me give you an example. It's a little bit like, you have one child and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Maybe we can have more children. And then, like you have another child, and then people ask you, when is going to be the next one? You're like, well, hold on. I first have to get comfortable. It's a little bit like that. You want to do like one thing at a time, and maybe eventually you're going to have five children, and that means you have your book and your podcast, etc. But each of them needs love and dedication because the audience can tell. If you just throw something together, they can tell. They're like, this doesn't come from a place of love. This comes from a place of productivity, and I don't really like that very much. So you want to be the place of love. You need to make sure that you are comfortable for that second child or third or whatever that would be for you. Mm.
Okay, so it's not necessarily wait until you hit, your X year of business or until you have a
No.
certain audience size. It's really just when do you have the capability to manage all of the pieces that are there? And I would also argue to manage the expectations that come from it, right? It's not a get rich quick scheme. Some people are very fortunate and can take off, really early on in the beginning, but most podcasts have a slower growth, just like everything. Most businesses are going to have a slower growth and struggle. So it's really just when you feel, if I'm understanding you, when you feel like the capability to say, this is yet another piece I want to take on in addition to everything else I'm kind of doing to kind of keep things growing. Speaking about taking on yet another piece and pieces here, I want to talk about your framework for these petite practices. What exactly inspired this framework? Can you tell us about that?
It was basically looking at my own life and seeing if you think about like a ladder or a staircase, how did I get from one step to the next? And all of a sudden, because I'm very passionate about European culture and French language, all of a sudden I gave that framework the name Petit Practice, so small steps. And sometimes the steps didn't work out, which is why it's called practice and not petite perfection. Sometimes it was like, okay, well, that didn't work. But then again, it was a small step. So it's not like I totally messed that one up. So the PT practice, to give you like a concrete example, when I was writing my dissertation, meant writing 2 pages per day, 2 pages per day. It was not writing 20 pages per day. It was not staying up every night and crank things out and make a dissertation somewhat like this absolute painful experience. There was joy involved in writing my dissertation, maybe not at every day, but I made it so small that I felt I was starting to look forward to it because I knew that as soon as I was done with the 2 pages, that it was a really good feeling because I saw it grow. Kind of like think about yourself when you're getting ready for something. Maybe it's, running a marathon. Maybe it's, like getting a dinner together, how you assemble all the little ingredients, or you get yourself physically in shape, and how you see that momentum is building. And that's how Petite Practice was born. It was messy at times, but there was momentum, and that momentum created that moment of joy because I felt like I see it rolling. And then after a while, it becomes a habit, right? Because you already know now, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write the 2 pages. So your body just knows.
So are these petite practices always kind of, I guess habitual is the thing I'm thinking of, or it's not just necessarily taking I want a dissertation and breaking it down into the chunks that are there. Are those chunks really, at least in your framework, things that you do over and over again, or can they also just be one-off? I want to do these little tiny baby steps that are, I don't know, that's not a great question, but you know what I'm saying? Like
No, I
where it's not a
totally,
habit.
totally.
Okay.
I totally understand your question. It's not always to where you take something big and you chunk it down and you keep doing that same thing every day. It could be even like, for instance, some business owners that I work with, they have like whatever hip problems, neck problems, and they carry that stress in those areas. It could even be that you just take 5 minutes per day for a stretching. And that's your petite practice. So you don't need to necessarily get ready for that marathon by stretching every day and add more activities to it. You could just do the same thing every day. So I like the word habitual for sure. But at the same time, the consistency is really what matters. It's the consistency. And that is, I leave up to you. I never set people's schedule. I never say you need to do this every day or you need to do this 6 times per week. I more think, what works for you? Is it 1 time per week? Is it twice per week? But whatever rhythm you feel is good, we're going to stick to it. And if we feel it's not great, we can always adjust, but we have to stick to it because especially if you have children, routine is really what creates happy children. My children thrive on routine. So we are the same way, adults. And sometimes we are so hard on ourselves in our routines, whether that's sleep, food, business. We kind of like, get all sidetracked. Petite practice creates that routine, but you are in charge of finding the time, finding what content that routine entails, and then, of course, how does it really work for you? Is it in the morning? Is it in the evening? Right? So that's your flexibility. But at the end of the day, the results that I'm getting from my clients, unbelievable, unbelievable.
I love that you leave this kind of consistency piece in their hands because I know some people will define consistency as I do an Instagram live every Friday at 10 a.m. every single week, rain, shine, Christmas doesn't matter. And for me, I define consistency as continuing to do the thing, continuing showing up. Like I'm thinking of putting pennies in the jar. It doesn't matter if I put that penny in the jar at 10 a.m. on Friday or at 3 p.m. on Friday or if I wait till Saturday, but I'm still doing it. And it's just keeping up that pattern, that habit, like you're saying. So I think it's really important that you honor that people have kind of different needs when it comes to that. For other people, the fact that they do it at 10 a.m. every Friday is how they show up because they know that that's their non-negotiable. And for me, it feels constricting. And I can tell you that I'm going to rebel about having to do something over and over again every single week. So I think that's a really key piece and probably why you're so successful is that you're honoring the uniqueness of every individual in this practice.
Love that feedback. And I think what's important too is the more you tune in with yourself, the more you actually notice that you're changing as well. So I'm a different individual from when I wrote my dissertation, from when I just had my children to when I just started my business. We are always changing, we are evolving. And sometimes you look at something that you used to do and you're like, I can't believe I did that, right? And you pick up new habits. So a petit practice doesn't mean like you have to do this for the rest of your life. Maybe that element of, let's just say, meditation is replaced in the future with a walk, right? It's more really that you do something that's important for you, and those little things that are important for you are probably going to be modified as you change yourself. And that's great because that means you're in tune with your body. And I love that.
Lovely. I was going to actually ask you earlier when we were talking about these petite practices, I had a question in mind for you about whether or not you used this in your writing, and you kind of mentioned that you did for your dissertation. But if we're moving into
Yeah.
writing your books,
Mhm.
what was the process like for that? When did we talked earlier about kind of knowing when you can incorporate something based on your capabilities. So how did you decide, like, now is the time for me to sit down and write my first book?
hmm Yeah, the book really came because I felt a little bit like a broken record where I was constantly repeating the same things over and over again. And I was like, oh, I just talked about that. I wish there would be like a way that I could just say, let's just go to page 42 and let's look at this together. And there wasn't the page 42. So then I thought, well, like I maybe probably should just like put it down together and write it. And I actually hear that a lot, even about the classes that I teach, where people from various parts of the country or the world say, oh, I wish I could get a little piece of you somewhere in your coaching and your teaching in your book. And that's really when it came that I again listened to my audience. So the voice of the consumer said, I need something that's a little bit more tangible than just a PDF of something. I want actually some bound copy that's pretty. So all my books are really visually appealing. And there are collections of worksheets. So the PT practice is in itself in the book. So each page is a one-page worksheet, and then there's, of course, room for you to write things out. So I knew from the get-go that I wouldn't write the next Harry Potter novel or, something along these lines because I knew that I wanted to create something that pulls in our own kinesthetic learners by writing things down. So how did I do that? Answering your question there was I basically had to figure out what's the journey that you take to really grow your business. And then I arranged it in that. And that doesn't mean that our journey is linear. I basically put elements in the book, but I don't expect that you read the book from the first to the last page. I would love for you to just take the book and open it and look at the table of contents and say, today, I want to create an elevator pitch to pitch myself to the next podcasts. And then you look at that. And on the next day, maybe you're going to look at, all right, my branding seems off. How can I create a really good brand sheet? And that will be our next day. So as long as you keep the momentum going, the book will be there for you. You don't have to do like, oh, I didn't do this page there. That's not how it's built. It's essentially just like a spice rack, and you open the cabinet, you're taking out the spices that feel good on that day.
I'm hearing a theme here of this honoring the uniqueness of people, right? Where you have, they don't have to necessarily, not everybody's going to go from page 7 to 8 to 9. They may not need page 9 at this moment, right? And consistency is not always going live at 10 a.m. So really honoring that individuality. And maybe that's the answer to this question, but I'm also curious because I looked online, I was Amazon shopping for Prime Day, and all of your stuff has just 5-star reviews. So
Uh-huh.
what do you think is the underlying pin of that? How do you only get 5-star reviews?
Well, I think to be honest with you, I mean that the fact that when I coach people, I always say, all right, if there's something you would like me to change, let me know, right? And then I think alone the fact that you open yourself up, being vulnerable and saying that and being open to that criticism already makes people appreciate you. Because I'm never saying, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Just this morning, I taught a workshop and we're looking at brand boards. And I talked about something in the brand board thing, and then I said, "Oops." here we go. There's actually like an element there that I need to change. People love that. They give you like high ratings because they appreciate that you're human and you didn't create this just with some AI bot or with some person that's not even you, a ghostwriter, right? They actually appreciate that I'm behind my work. And so a lot of the reviews are like, she's really approachable. If that's a theme, if you look through my reviews, and that approachability comes from the fact that I own my mistakes and I basically tell them like, oh, yeah, over here. So if there's something they criticize, it's always in my face via email, via DM. And then the fact that I respond to it and I say, yep, well, messed that one up, right? Is when they come back, they're like, man, she's she's standing behind her product. I love that. Because so many companies are so like there's no face behind the company. I don't want to be that person. I always want to be the person that if there is something I can do for you, how can I serve you? You need to let me know. And I think that's really how the ratings came about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised at all because we kind of started part of this conversation earlier about really the conversations you're having with your audience, right? If you're taking that, internalizing it, and then using it to improve, or even just to acknowledge that you are a human at the end of the day. I mean, you bring this wealth. You're obviously an expert in what it is that you're doing, and you're showing up like a human being, taking responsibility, taking pride. You know, you're talking about how you wanted to have pretty covers and make everything look really good. It's common sense that people are going to respond to that in an overwhelmingly positive way. Now, I am curious, did you go the self-publishing route or the traditional publishing route, and how did you make that decision?
Actually, with a self-published, and the main decision was just finances. I got some quotes from editors, and if you're listening to this right now and you're debating to write a book, it's a little bit like buying a treadmill to get healthy, right? There's a big investment, and you don't know you're actually going to love the treadmill. So I was like, well, what if I write a book and then I hire this editor and nobody's going to buy the book? That'd be really bad, right? Then I'm out the money for the editor and nobody buys my book and the time, right? So I thought, well, if I write it myself, I mean, I'm out my own time, but still in the journey of creating it, I'm still going to learn a lot about how to do it. And I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm actually really passionate about it. And at least it's something that I feel every single decision is my own. So I self-published. And I can honestly tell you, there are so many mistakes I made along the way. It's absolutely amazing. I can probably fill like a whole month of podcast episodes about the mistakes, and I totally own them. And they're quite hilarious as well. So if you want to self-publish a book, let me know. And I would love to let you know what maybe not to do, right? So how to do it and how not to do it, right? So yeah. But then again, some people are like, I don't want to spend the time, da, 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 da. But for me, it was like, no, I'm going to do this from the grounds up. From the grounds up. I'm going to teach this myself. This has to be something I want to feel like my own mind is in every single decision.
Okay, well, I might be reaching out to you offline to discuss those self-publishing lessons because I'm really inspired, as someone who wants to publish her own book, but allows the fear of not doing it right, right? Of
Yeah.
maybe I do need a book coach, maybe I do need an editor, maybe I need to hire
Mm.
someone to design the cover and all of these things versus a mindset of let me try it and learn, knowing that I can improve, knowing that I can be a human and maybe not do it perfectly the first time or the second time or even the third time if that's where I am. But just allowing that imperfection to exist in the world, still knowing that it's gonna do what it's meant to do, which is to help people. So I think this is an incredible conversation. I think you're gonna really fire people up to want to build their own platform, whether that is podcasting or publishing, probably not both at the same time, but maybe starting with one.
Mm.
So with that, let's
Stagger. Mm.
yeah, we'll pick one. We'll start with one, but let's say we're gonna start with one of these. What is your Thrive in Five for kind of building your own platform?
Yeah, and actually, because you mentioned the podcasting and the publishing earlier, I actually kind of look at this as a 3P framework: podcasting, publishing, and presenting. So in 4 weeks, I'm going to give my TED Talk, and it's like something people ask me about all the time. So how do I land a TED Talk, right? I get that question a lot too. And that is something, again, think about that, right? At the podcast, 2023. At the books, 2024. TED Talk 2025. So this is how I function, right? It's that little staircase I just talked about. Boom, 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 boom. It didn't all happen in 1 year, but one thing led to the next. So my Thrive in 5 would be choose one. I mean, obviously, it's great if you choose a TED Talk. That might not necessarily happen in 5 minutes, but choose one thing that you're really, really passionate about, and then think, who else is passionate about this and how can I share that content with that particular audience? Because if you're passionate about it, and I think I get that feedback all the time, the energy, the passion, the excitement, people will pick up on this, especially if they listen to it. They don't want to listen to some blobby, boring, blah, blah, blah. They want to listen to you, uniquely you, and they want to hear the passion in your voice. And it will translate also, of course, in your emails, your written content, into your box. But you need to first figure out what that is. So my latest book, Discover Your Superpower, right? So that you need to figure out what your superpower is, tapping into that. And I have a quiz that's called Discover Your Superpower Quiz. That might only take you 5 minutes to take that. That might help. But in general, all my students, my clients, the coaches that I work with, that's really the number one thing. It has to be like the uniquely you passion, and you have to figure this out. It might take you 5 minutes, but if you already know what that is, then start working on that thing that you're excited about and start building from there. Because I can't wait to figure out what that would be for you, but we're all different. So your thing is probably different from my thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. My last question for you, I think you just answered, but I want a little bit more information because I'm just so excited. So, I was going to ask you, what is this next big step? You've got the podcast going great. You've got
Mhm.
these books with this top Amazon seller, and now we just heard what's next is this TED Talk. Can you
Uh-huh.
tease a little bit
Yep.
about what exactly that's going to be about?
Talking about, it's actually quite emotional. I just had somebody yesterday that I presented a talk to, and she nearly started crying. So it talks about how I invented my PT practice framework and how it really transformed lives. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I want to tease that out a little bit with everybody. But it is quite humbling, the journey of what happened. And it's quite timely because people talk about AI and people talk, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed and I'm overwhelmed. And essentially, what I'm trying to build is a little bit of a bridge between what are we in terms of humans and where are things going to go. So it's focusing on education in 2050, and I'm building a bridge to get there.
Wonderful. Well, I will make sure that the link to that gets into the show notes once that is live. That sounds very exciting and emotional, and I'm all for that. So, Dr. Christiana, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about your books, your podcast, any of that stuff, where should I send them?
Go to my website, drchristiana.com. So it's Doctor, and then my first name, Christiane, written all out. And then, of course, what you want to do is check out my podcast. Super easy, right? Just type in Happy Healthy Hustle. You can also look at those podcast episodes on my website or on YouTube. I'm always at Dr. Christiana. And then on Amazon are my books. Also, I have an Amazon storefront. So a lot of things that people ask me about are products that help your business, your wellness. And I put them together in cute little lists. I'm a big believer in lists, and I put them in my Amazon. And then you can look at them on there too. So if you are, today's Prime Day, right? If you are believing in Amazon shopping, that will be another place where you can find me on Dr. Christiana or Hello Happy Nest and my storefronts on Amazon.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure all of those links get into the show notes. Dr. Christiana, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.